the weight of iron and hope. The metal door slammed shut with a sound that swallowed every dream Maya Torres had ever held. 23 years old, convicted on charges she still struggled to comprehend, she found herself standing in the intake area of Redwood, Women's Correctional facility, wearing an orange jumpsuit. That felt like a second skin of shame. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting everything in a sickly yellow glow that made the concrete walls seem to close in tighter with each passing second. She had read somewhere that orange was supposed to be a happy color, the color of sunsets and summer flowers, but here it was just another way to strip away identity, another way to say you no longer belonged to the world outside. Her hands trembled as a female guard with dark hair pulled back in a severe bun processed her paperwork, fingers moving mechanically across the keyboard, without once looking up at Maya's face. In that moment, Maya understood that she had become invisible, just another number in a system designed to forget. Officer Sarah Chen had been working at Redwood for 6 years, long enough to develop the thick, emotional armor that all corrections officers eventually wore like a second uniform. She had learned early on that caring too much would destroy you from the inside out, that every inmate had a story designed to pull at your heartstrings, and that maintaining professional distance was not just recommended, but essential for survival. At 31 years old, she had mastered the art of seeing without truly looking, of hearing without really listening, of moving through her shifts like a ghost haunting the corridors of human suffering. Her colleagues respected her efficiency and reliability, never knowing that she went home each night, to an empty apartment where she sat in silence, wondering when exactly she had stopped feeling anything at all. The job had given her financial stability and a sense of purpose, but somewhere along the way it had also hollowed her out, leaving behind only the shell of the woman she used to be. Maya's first weeks in prison were a descent into a hell she had never imagined possible. The constant noise, the lack of privacy, the way time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously until she could no longer remember what day it was or how long she had been there. She shared a cell with a woman named Rita, who had been incarcerated for 12 years and had eyes that looked like they had forgotten what hope felt like. At night, Maya would lie on her thin mattress listening to the sounds of crying, arguing, and desperate laughter echoing through the cell block, wondering how people survived years in this place without losing their minds completely. She had been assigned to work in the prison library, a small mercy that gave her a few hours each day surrounded by books instead of bars, though even that sanctuary was monitored by guards who watched every movement with suspicion. The worst part was not the physical confinement but the psychological assault, the constant message that she was worthless, dangerous, someone who needed to be controlled and contained. Sarah first truly saw Maya 3 months into her sentence. It was during a routine security check in the library, and Sarah had been walking through the aisles making sure no contraband was being passed between inmates when she noticed a young woman sitting cross-legged on the floor between 2 shelves, a book of poetry open in her lap and tears streaming silently down her face. Something about the scene stopped Sarah in her tracks. Perhaps it was the utter vulnerability of it, the way Maya made no attempt to hide her grief. Or maybe it was just that Sarah recognized, in that moment, a reflection of her own carefully buried pain. Instead of reprimanding Maya for sitting on the floor or appearing distressed, Sarah found herself asking what she was reading, her voice softer than it had been in years. Maya looked up, surprised that anyone in this place would ask her a question that treated her like a human being rather than an inmate number, and held up the book to show the page, a poem about exile and longing and the desperate human need for connection. Their eyes met for just a few seconds, but in that brief exchange something shifted, like tectonic plates moving beneath the surface of carefully constructed defenses. The conversations began slowly, carefully, always within the bounds of professional propriety, but carrying an undercurrent of genuine connection that both women found simultaneously terrifying and essential. Sarah would find reasons to patrol the library more frequently, and Maya would time her work schedule to coincide with Sarah's shifts. And gradually they began to talk about books, about poetry, about the small observations that make life bearable even in unbearable circumstances. Sarah learned that Maya had been studying literature before her arrest, that she had dreams of becoming a teacher, that the crime she had been convicted of stemmed from being in the wrong place at the wrong time with the wrong people. Maya learned that Sarah had wanted to be a social worker but had taken the corrections job for the better pay and benefits, that she had a younger brother who had stopped speaking to her because he disapproved of her work, that she wrote poetry herself late at night, but had never shown it to anyone. These exchanges were always brief, always careful, but they became the moments both women lived for, the bright points in days otherwise marked by routine and repression. The emotional danger of what was developing between them became impossible to ignore when Sarah found herself thinking about Maya during her off-duty hours, replaying their conversations, wondering what she was doing, whether she was safe, whether she was being treated fairly by the other guards and inmates. Sarah knew she was crossing professional lines even in her thoughts, that the ethical boundaries of her position were clear and unambiguous, but she could not stop the way her heart lifted every time she saw Maya, could not prevent the protective instinct that flooded through her whenever she witnessed the casual cruelty that some officers displayed toward inmates. Maya, for her part, felt the prison walls becoming both more oppressive and more bearable at the same time. Oppressive because she was acutely aware of the impossibility of her feelings, bearable because those brief moments with Sarah gave her something to hope for. A reminder that she was still capable of connection, still human despite everything this place tried to make her forget. The turning point came during a lockdown following a fight in the dining hall. Maya had been caught in the chaos, knocked to the ground and trampled, emerging with a black eye and bruised ribs but otherwise intact. Sarah had been one of the responding officers, and when she saw Maya injured on the floor, something inside her snapped. The professional mask she had worn for 6 years cracked completely, and she found herself kneeling beside Maya, checking her injuries with hands that shook, asking if she was okay with a voice that betrayed every feeling she had been trying to suppress. Other officers noticed, inmates noticed, and in that moment, Sarah realized she had exposed herself in a way that could cost her everything. But looking into Maya's eyes, seeing the gratitude and recognition and something deeper that reflected her own hidden feelings, Sarah understood that some things were worth the risk, that protecting yourself emotionally sometimes meant dying inside, and that she had been doing exactly that for too long. The relationship that developed between them existed in stolen glances, in carefully worded encouragement during difficult days, in Sarah finding small ways to make Maya's life easier within the rigid structure of prison regulations. Sarah would ensure Maya got library shifts during the quieter hours, would sometimes leave books she thought Maya would enjoy in places where she would find them, would position herself during yard time to make sure Maya stayed safe from the more aggressive inmates. Maya began to see the prison differently through Sarah's subtle acts of kindness, began to understand that not everyone in the system was indifferent or cruel, that sometimes people were trapped by circumstances just as surely as the inmates themselves. Their connection deepened through adversity, through the shared understanding that what they felt for each other was beautiful and impossible in equal measure, a love that bloomed in the most unlikely and forbidden of gardens. The complications intensified when another guard, Officer Martinez, began to notice the special attention Sarah paid to inmate Torres. Prison environments breed suspicion and jealousy in equal measure, and Martinez had his own complicated feelings about Sarah that made him watch her interactions with unusual scrutiny. He began making comments, insinuations that walked the line between joke and accusation, asking Sarah if she had a favorite inmate, suggesting that she seemed awfully invested in the library rotation schedule. Sarah felt the walls closing in, knew that any investigation into her conduct could end not just her career but potentially add charges against Maya for manipulating a guard, a common accusation in prisons that could extend her sentence significantly. The fear was paralyzing, but it also clarified something essential for Sarah. She would rather lose her job than pretend Maya meant nothing to her, would rather face consequences than return to the numb half-life she had been living before. Maya entered her world. Maya sensed the increased tension and made the painful decision to distance herself from Sarah, believing that protecting Sarah's career and future was more important than their connection. She requested a transfer to the kitchen work detail, stopped going to the library, avoided making eye contact during inspections or yard time. The separation was agony for both of them, a special kind of torture that prison walls made absolute. Sarah understood what Maya was trying to do and felt her heart breaking and healing. Simultaneously, breaking because the distance felt unbearable, healing because she realized that Maya's sacrifice demonstrated a love more genuine than any she had experienced in relationships that were socially acceptable and emotionally hollow. She began to question everything about the life she had built, the compromises she had made, the ways she had convinced herself that security and stability were more important than living authentically. The resolution came not with drama but with quiet certainty. Sarah made an appointment with the prison warden and submitted her resignation, effective in 2 months after she had completed her contracted obligations. She also applied to return to school for her master's in social work, determined to work with formerly incarcerated individuals in ways that would honor what she had learned from Maya about the humanity that the prison system tried so hard to erase. She could not tell Maya directly about her decision due to the regulations still in effect, but she found a way to leave one final book for Maya to discover, a volume of love poems with a note tucked inside that simply said, "Wait for me. 2 years. I will be there when you get out. What we have is real, and real things are worth waiting for." Sarah, Maya, found the book 3 days later, and when she read those words, she wept openly in her cell while Rita pretended to be asleep, understanding that some moments are too sacred to witness directly. The story of Sarah and Maya reminds us that love finds a way, even in the most impossible circumstances, that human connection can flourish in places designed to destroy it, and that sometimes the most courageous thing we can do is acknowledge our feelings even when the world tells us they are wrong or forbidden. Their love was not about physicality or possession, but about truly seeing another person and being seen in return, about recognizing the divine spark in someone else even when society has decided they are disposable. If this story has touched your heart, if you have felt the ache of impossible love or the courage it takes to choose authenticity over comfort, please consider liking this video and sharing it with someone who needs to be reminded that love is always worth the risk. Your engagement helps stories like these reach people who need them most, who need to know they are not alone in their struggles and their hope. Sarah worked her remaining 2 months at Redwood with a lightness she had never before experienced, knowing that her future held purpose and possibility rather than just routine and repression. Maya counted down the days until her release, working on her GED and planning for the education she would pursue on the outside, sustained by the knowledge that someone was waiting for her, that her life was not over but just beginning in unexpected ways. They never spoke directly again during those months, but they carried each other forward through the power of a promise made and a future imagined together. If this story moved you, if you believe in love that transcends circumstances and the courage to build a life based on truth rather than convenience, please take a moment to leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Your words matter, your stories matter, and together we create a community that believes in redemption, possibility, and the transformative power of genuine human connection. 24 months later, on a Tuesday morning in spring, Maya walked out of Redwood Women's Correctional Facility into brilliant sunshine, carrying only a small bag of belongings and an enormous weight of hope. Across the parking lot, leaning against a car with her hair down and wearing jeans instead of a uniform, Chen waited with a smile that made everything they had endured worthwhile. They walked toward each other slowly, savoring each step, knowing that the embrace waiting at the end was not an ending but a beginning, the first moment of a life they would build together, free from walls and judgment and fear. Maya had survived prison and found herself in the process. Sarah had left behind security and found purpose. And together, they had discovered that love is not about perfect circumstances but about perfect timing. When two souls recognize each other across impossible distance and refuse to let go despite everything standing in their way,